Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it.
Middle of a hostile government takeover. I wanna talk about it, but I'll be late for work. And if you're saying, wait a minute, who we have to stop this? We have one, but you didn't want the lady in office. Now that we're a part of a Nigerian prince scam, surprise, surprise, it ended up being a white man. Oh, I just wanna know, what the hell do I do? Probably drink.
Hi, y'all. Welcome back to another week. Clearly, my mind state is of variable flexibility at this point, to be quite honest. How are y'all doing? I am not holding up. The government is just definitely impacting my life. So funny, because actually I want to talk to you guys about how job stability is an actual fallacy. We think that if you get a good job, quote unquote, which has variable definitions depending on who you are, but something that resembles a W-2 salaried position with benefits in a stable company or the government, that is how you make your bed for life, right? That is the golden ticket. And lo and behold, here we are in 2025, and the least stable job is a federal one. Now, yes, I'm saying this very lightheartedly, and in the midst of trauma, my best response is humor. But really, it is not funny how many people are losing their jobs and how incredibly destructive this current administration is. So I do want to acknowledge that I know that this is absolutely a difficult time and a time full of uncertainty for many people. And that is definitely no joke. So for me personally, I have been, my coach calls it the den of despair, where you're just feeling sad. Sorry for yourself, really. I feel like I'm kind of in the door of the den, like I'm resisting going into the den, but that's a whole nother deeper conversation. That's an inside reference for people in the Dr. Coach school. But I have been feeling terrible. And I thought that the best way through was to just try to ignore the news. I have not been watching the news. I have not been reading a lot of things, but there's almost no way to escape it. And there's really no way to bury your head in the sand, right? As soon as you open social media, as soon as you talk to anybody, you know that things are happening. So for me, there's a privilege in that I don't work for the government or a tech company or any of these people that are directly impacted by the federal layoffs. So I'm a little bit removed in that sense, but I'm also front and center in the vaccine sense, right? As a pediatrician, I'm having regular conversations with parents, some angry parents, some verbally abusive parents, about vaccinations and their safety, because there is such a widespread distrust of everything. There is such a dilution of truth that no one knows what's fact versus fiction anymore. And everyone is just coming out swinging, right? Like everyone is a thumb thug on the internet. Everyone is, just spouting off craziness. And that is a direct impact. I'm also a Black person. I'm also a woman in this country. There are women's rights issues happening. There are reproductive rights. And I get that the whole point, because literally Steve Bannon said it, I don't know how long ago, maybe in Trump's first presidency, that the playbook was to do such a large scale mass destruction to cause so much overwhelm to then fuel people into helplessness. And I knew that if I just ignored the news and if I just leaned into community and went to my therapy session and relied on my loved ones, that I was going to make it through it. But y'all, literally, the chickens have come home to roost. I feel like I am in full despair. And I had this conversation with my coach yesterday because it's showing up in so many ways. But she talked about the fact that we are in an American delusion. This idea that, America's X, when in fact it is Y. And we've been allowed to hold on to that delusion because we've been seeing these little bits of progress. And it made me think of how I got through medical school and residency and fellowship was this concept of relentless incrementalism. Meaning that if you are relentless, you just keep persevering, little by little, you will start to see progress. You will start to see it's like the wheels of change, right? Even MLK said, that the universe is on this arc of moral, whatever. I don't even know the quote. It always bends towards justice, right? And so it's just this concept of like little by little, slow increments, you get to see progress. Oh, they passed a law for marriage equality. Oh, yes, we've had Roe v. Wade. Oh, yes, we have, protection of transgender people. Oh, yes, we have. And we see these little changes that show that, oh, we're making progress in some way. When in actuality, you cannot make progress on quicksand, right? But these little snatches, and honestly, Kamala was going to be one of those snatches, right? Where we just feel safe enough to be a little bit complacent, to just keep going along. And right now, there's nothing progressive about America. We are in full regression. But the point is, we're regressing back to what this country has really actually always been. We are literally at rock bottom. My coach was like, we're at the bottom of the ocean already. And I was like, oh, but I felt like I was keeping my head above water all this time and I was treading. And at least if Kamala won, I would still be able to like tread and then try to figure things out. Because in actuality, things have not been okay for a long time, right? Like we are still fighting about reproductive rights. We are still fighting about medical misinformation. We are still getting overtaxed and not having universal health care and not having family leave, like maternity leave and good health care for Black women reproductively. Like there's so many things broken, but at least if we had this, then I felt like I was treading water. I was able to keep my head above and have like a little bit of breath, right? And she's like, no, we've literally always been at the bottom of the ocean. We just didn't realize it. And I'm like, oh, I mean, the feeling, first of all, the feeling that makes my body feel, like I feel that in my gut. It's like that sinking feeling, that deep, guttural, I don't know. It's pressure. I don't even know what it is, but that's how I feel. And and like shortness of breath, right? Like I feel like I'm losing my breath here because there are just so many things. And those things were already on my shoulders. And now we have no little crack to try to make improvements on that. Instead, the door has slammed shut. It has been sealed and cemented. And now what do we do? It's funny because I really thought in ignoring a lot of things and filtering the news and trying to protect my peace and I don't know, all the things that I thought were going to be protective have turned out to not be sufficient. And so my next thing was to move into numb, to move into indifference. It was all about effing around and finding out. It was all about, I'm just going to rest here. And I literally moved into numbness. And it was like, nothing I do matters. So what's the point? Like, I've already tried to tell everybody. I don't have nothing else to say. It just is what it is. Let the chips fall where they may. That was my next phase. I feel like they need to redo the phases of guilt because this is like some other mess, right? Like, Maybe there's a stages of trauma. I don't know. But that was my next phase. And I felt like collectively Black women were in that phase of like, we not doing nothing for nobody. I don't care. Don't tell me about your sadness now because we've been trying to tell you. But even that is like armor, right? It's like body armor in a fire where eventually the flames will start to reach out and touch you. And so that's now where I am, where despite trying to ignore, to filter, to replenish, it's like pouring into my cup and there's holes in the bottom. That's really what it feels like. So, how this was manifesting for me was I just felt like I was going through the motions of things in my life. Like, yeah, I have things. I'm like, I run my business and I go to clinic now, back to being a medical director and like all these things. And I'm just checking boxes like check, 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 check. I'm doing what I have to do. I'm keeping my head down, like whatever. It is just what it is. And so my coach called it out. She's like, it's one thing to feel sad and it's one thing to be upset or to have emotions, but numb is not a great emotion, right? Like this nonchalance, this like complete apathy is a little concerning. And I was like, no, absolutely, that's correct. Like I feel removed. And when I looked at the root of my nonchalance, it was helplessness. The very emotion that I knew that the government is trying to elicit within us all had gotten me and I didn't even realize it. That I had been feeling super helpless. I'm like, planes are falling out of the sky or crashing midair or flipping upside down. It's just, there's so much happening. And I have assumed a position of helplessness. Oof, not a good place to be. And so the assignment for me is to look at things that are within my circle of control. Now, this is something conceptually, this is something I'm very familiar with. It's something I talk about on the podcast. It's something I coach my clients on because we spend a lot of time trying to manage things that are outside of our circle of control. We're always worried about what so-and-so is going to say. And if we ask a question, they might not like us. And so we stay silent about things that matter to us and just hope that if we don't say anything, people will be peaceful towards us. And that's so not true. That's like the biggest lie. And that is literally what I coach on. I had a conversation just yesterday with a doctor who has a contract she has not read. And I'm like, why haven't you read that contract? And she's like, well, I realize like there's something in the clause that says like I need to give 90 days notice and I'm already an entrepreneur. I don't know that I want to re-enter into such a contractual agreement because it feels like I'm moving backward, like I'm relinquishing freedom. So I'm like, well, have you asked if that's negotiable? No, I haven't asked because the person who owns the practice is so nice and I just don't want to ruin our business relationship. And I'm like, that's just so fascinating to me. You're not willing to ask for what you want because you're worried about someone else's discomfort. So you're willing to sustain the discomfort instead. And you're not willing to have clear and honest communication with this person for whom you hope to have a good relationship. It's a setup for failure because if anything happens and this doctor now wants to leave, she's going to have to break the contract or ride out this 90 days of her life unhappily. And either way, she's going to have to leave and possibly change the relationship between her and this hiring physician. So honestly, the thing that you're preventing is the thing you're going to create. I say that all the time. When you avoid a thing, it becomes the thing you create. We are in a very precarious state, and the things we can control are just ourselves. We are our own circle of control. That's it. We get to decide if we're going to not ask, stay quiet, or if we're going to agree and go along just to get along, or if we're going to ask questions and advocate for ourselves. And it doesn't have to be confrontational, and it doesn't have to ruin our relationships. It just doesn't. We get to make those decisions. I get to decide in this moment, do I want to continue to be a helpless Black woman in America? And it's not even true that I'm helpless, right? Like, I'm a woman of means. I can move. My mom is from the Caribbean. I can get a Caribbean passport. My uncle in the Caribbean has been trying to get me to get a medical license for years. I could go practice somewhere else. My boyfriend is Ghanaian. I could practice in Ghana. Like, I have choices. But for some reason in my helplessness, I've just been sitting here numb, just waiting to see the fallout, trying to decide how this is going to change the vision I had for my life, and grieving what I perceive to be the death of the vision that I had. I have chosen to be helpless. That is a choice, very much so. And honestly, I'm still in the stages of grief. I don't know the right solution and the right cure for everything that's happening. I just don't. I'm definitely still grieving because I don't even know what stage of grief I'm in, but I'm definitely pissed off that I even have to figure this out and that I have to make decisions now that I don't want to. Like, I literally feel like a toddler who wants to throw herself on the ground and kick and scream because I don't want to have to do this. But the point is, I have a choice. I can decide to not do this and just be helpless. Or I can decide that, like, what are the better alternatives here? What are my choices here? And I can make a choice and I can go down a path that allows me to maintain control of myself. What am I deciding to do? I don't know. Today, it's going to be continuing to pour into my community, continuing to emphasize to doctors that we need to stand up for ourselves, stand up for our community. It's for me to continue to coach you all through this podcast and through this program. So that being said, I really do want to talk about being a doctor at this moment. I'm a pediatrician. Vaccine policies coming into play here. Childhood chronic illnesses are coming into play here. People don't believe us anymore. People don't believe in what we're saying. They don't trust the science. It's a hard place to practice from. People still think that doctors get incentives from giving vaccines. Like, where's my incentive? I've never seen one. If that were true, why would pediatricians be the lowest paid subspecialty in the field? Like, there has to be a certain degree of insanity, I think, to be a physician, especially in primary care in this day and age, because there is no incentive. We are the lowest paid across the board, peds, of course, but just in any specialty, family, internal med, when it comes to primary care, we are the bottom of the barrel in terms of pay. And yet we are the front line for every illness, for managing our patients, and then also the front line for every abuse, verbal and otherwise. So it does take a certain degree of insanity to be here. So when I say you absolutely have to negotiate for what you want and advocate for yourself, you're going into the front lines and you don't want to speak up for yourself is wild to me. For the people who do want to speak up for themselves, there are just so many ways to do it. And you get a choice. This episode is like all about choices. You get to decide. I've had enough. I need a change. And any period of transition, you get to decide who you want to be. You get to decide who you want to lean on, how you want to carry yourself forward. So regardless as to what job you're in, you need to know what it is you should be getting out of that job, because the support you're going to need at this point is on an all-time high. You should not be working and be underpaid. You should not be working more than you need to work to maintain your family And you should not be working more than you need to maintain your sanity, your mental health, a good quality familial life. All of these things are critical. And most of you guys know what it is you desire. Like really deep down, if you're thinking about what you desire and the life you're trying to create, you know what it is you want. And a lot of times we continue to have these internal conversations. They're not external. So they're internal, which means they're inside of our circle of control. We have these conversations where we convince ourselves that either what we're asking for is too much and we don't ask, or we ask for less than what it is, or we ask for what we want and the minute they give any kind of show of uncertainty or, oh, I might, or inconvenience, so we might not be able to give you that, we need to find out, y'all back down. I have been there. I have been nervous to ask 1,000 times. 1,000 times. But at the end of the day, I am my own circle of control. And I need to know that I have my own back, that I have done what I needed to do to make my life the quality of life I need to have, especially now. If I need to leave America, I know how to do that. If I need to stay in America, I'm still figuring out how to do that. But that definitely involves always negotiating. Because first of all, in order to leave America, I'm going to need that cash. I'm going to need to be paid, right? Like money is a resource. Time is a resource, an unrenewable one. These are things I'm going to continue to make sure that I have so that I can survive, so that I can rebound, so that I can heal from the trauma of what is happening and what is going to continue to happen for I don't know how far into the future. I don't know how far into the future this is going to go. There are going to be repercussions that last years, decades maybe. I don't know. What can I control right now? I can control what I work on, how much I save up, getting paid more so that I can save up, so that I have freedom of mobility, so that I can move, so that I can pay for my passport renewal, so that I can have health insurance for now and get my vaccinations and get boosted. I'm not helpless, nor are you. So what are you going to do about your one good life? What choices are you going to make? Because you have choices. Have a good week. Bye. Now for the remix. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.